What's the most perfect book that you've read? Like a book where you think there's nothing you could change to make it better, or has the least to change.
Well, I've read I'd say a few books recently, which I would put in that category.
Oh,
Here's one of them right here. I may have mentioned this one to you.
let's take a look at that. So we've got physics and politics.
Hmm. Walter Bagehot,
Huh.
who was also a early editor of the London Economist.
What are some things you like about that book in particular?
Well, what he's done is on the basis of a rather sketchy picture of how people evolved from apes over a period of something like a couple of million years. He actually wrote down a conjectural history, which I think was borne out more or less. Uh, let's see if I can get. Let's see.
I guess this is after Darwin, though, right? Or after Darwin's work?
No, this is before Darwin,
Oh,
or I should say, yeah. I mean, Darwin published his major work in 1859,
hmm.
The Origin of Species, and that's about the day that Bagehot died in
Oh,
that period. There's another one which I thought was very good. So you can just look over the table of contents, which is very
I'll take a
abbreviated.
look at that. But what's another one that you were going to
Well,
mention?
I'll
Another?
get it out. Da-da-da-da.
Let's see what you got here. Huh.
Power and Privilege. The author is a sociologist, presumably dead by this time, but
Hmm. Oh, is that Gerhard Lenski?
right.
Okay.
So he's written a what amounts to a treatise on the development of humanity. Um, well, let's see. A theory of social stratification. That's the subtitle.
Hmm. Is
And
that is that like referring to hierarchies in society, or?
yeah, right. I mean, you could just run your ideas over the chapter titles so you can get a picture of what's going on.
Well, hmm.
So I find that, and he has a quite a convincing thing. I would say largely conservative.
Hmm. So is he sort of trying to justify the hierarchy that exists in?
No, he's not trying to justify anything.
I see.
He's
It's just.
he's trying to explain the basic causal factors in human history, prehistory, and
Hmm.
current history,
Okay.
and he develops his theory in about the first third of the book, and then he goes into the anthropological literacy literature, which he is really very much into,
Hmm.
and it shows how it describes these things in reality.
Hmm. What are some things that you would say make this a close to perfect book? Um, he has a very good argument throughout.
It's a very good argument, and it's well detailed. And there's somewhere in that he has a very comprehensive outline of where it is, based on some principles of human nature. He has several different aspects of that, but he considers, first of all, he considers people, human nature, to be rather selfish.
Hmm.
I mean, he divides. He has maybe a list of something like 10 basic principles, and he goes over each one and talks about whether it's conservative or liberal. That's a, so one basic principle is the principle of human selfishness, which he considers conservative. But he has other following from that. He talks about the tendency for people to overproduce more people,
Hmm. Like overpopulation, you mean?
overpopulation, which he considers to be liberal, actually. And you put those two things together, and you're bound to get a rather uh, high distribution of inequality.
Hmm. Is he saying that he think, and are you talking about liberal in the sense of American politics, or like
No,
classical
no,
liberal?
in the general sense of what, like the Democrats in general are in favor of more equality than
Hmm.
there actually is in the real world, and the Republicans are more in favor of just letting people be free and not worrying too much about the great distribution of income, which is a maldistribution. And and he thinks that over time, you started out in very small tribes, maybe 50 people,
Hmm.
and the population pressure is going to build up. So there's going to be constant warfare between the two groups in the struggle for food and for land, and and so forth. So, and incidentally, this is that particular thing is also echoed by Herbert Spencer. I don't know if you know too much about him.
Not really. I mean, I've heard the name, but I don't know much about him. No.
Now, if you want to look up Spencer's Principles of Sociology, written around 1870, I think you'd be impressed by that.
Oh, so that's another pretty good book, you'd say.
Yeah, I haven't actually read that book, but I've
Oh,
read excerpts from it
sure, sure.
and so forth.
Hmm. How come he's uh, how come in this book Power and Privilege is he thinking in terms of like political parties or movements? Is that kind of integral to what he's talking about?
Yes, he talks about the most influential groups of people, and he considers politicians to be the most
I see.
influential group.
Hmm.
Um, and well, okay. I mean, you could just even just looking over the table of contents, you can get a feel for what he's doing. And there's also some summary stuff right in there.
Hmm.
In other words, he's listing his principles, maybe 10 or 15 principles.
Hmm.
So he thinks you've got power and privilege. He thought that he could also talk about prestige, but he thinks that prestige follows from the first things of power and privilege.
Well, I'll give it a look. Um, since he's talking in terms of politics, I guess a while ago, do you think it's holding up pretty well with politics as it is now, or would he have to revise
Well,
it?
I mean, he's dealing with the entire prehistory of human beings,
I
so
see.
he's not talking about what happens day by day.
Okay.
Just the basic underlying principles that are people are living at.
So looking for more
So that's a very
long-lasting.
good book, I thought, and yeah, I've got lots of things to think about. I mean, food for thought is very good.
Do you think either of these are sort of like a model for what you'd like to do with your new book?
Well, I mean, my book is much more ambitious even
Okay,
than these,
sure.
and I might have reason to quarrel with a few of the principles that he lays out. I think he doesn't give enough uh, um, weight, I think, to the somewhat generous aspects of human existence.
Hmm.
I mean, people are not really just for themselves. Themselves, they're for the family, for the friends. In other words, the closer other people are to you, and in terms of distance, social distance and physical distance, um, the more weight you would give to these individuals.
Okay.
So, and so that there's a kind of contradiction there. Like Adam Smith, if you read it, took a look at his book on what the heck is this other book called? Something like Moral Principles.
Moral
On
sentiments.
the very first page, he says that there's something in human nature that is pleased by the sight of other people doing well. But then later on in his book, he talks about uh, he gives a hypothetical situation where the population of China is wiped out by some kind of plague, and he said, you might have some philosophical reflections as a result, but it wouldn't bother you all that much. But if you had to have one of your fingers removed the next morning, it would bother you quite a bit. So, in other words, it's very, very important about the particular position that you had vis-a-vis your close acquaintances and friends versus the rest of the humanity, basically.
Well, we know that there are exceptions even to that, though. Like
Of course there
there
are.
are plenty of people who have sacrificed their lives for others, and sometimes even just as a form of protest. Like there is the airman who lit himself on fire, I think, to protest what's going on in
That's
Gaza.
right. And in fact, people, I mean, just the whole idea of fighting a war means that you're willing to risk your life for for your country. I mean, if nobody was willing to do that, we wouldn't have wars. So
Well,
he represents the
yeah,
the tribes getting bigger and bigger, and the reason they're getting bigger is because of technological progress, which he considers, by the way, the underlying driving force making for progress is technology, um, in the sense of improvements of transportation and communication. So a central government uh, can have command over larger and larger uh, portions of the total population of the world and reach out further, which of course makes for more conflict because you, you, you're both competing for land and you're competing against each other in other ways. So it's you can be critical of that, but that certainly is a very impressive collection. I'll give you still another book, which is quite interesting, maybe not at the level of those two, and that's this one
let's see.
by an anthropologist.
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned this one before.
Okay.
The Secret of Our Success. But have you been looking at it again? Looking at that one again recently?
Say this again?
Have you been looking at The Secret of Our Success again recently?
I've read the whole book, and I'm impressed. So he gives a theory of how come we succeeded and our ancestors, which they think might be something like the modern chimpanzees, never did, and he gives a reason why that should be so. and he thinks it's due to changes in the climate in Africa,
Mm.
due to the drying out of the population. So you have periods of drying out. This might be in a couple of million years ago,
Mm.
and that forced people to come out of the trees where they typically would live in onto the ground, which is very dangerous because there's all kinds of different predators
Sure.
wandering around. So people had to look out for each other, and they were also crowded together for that reason, partly for self protection. And that situation, uh, in effect, forced them to begin to understand each other. So they developed language, and they began learning from each other, and that was a cumulative process which led us to where we are today. So that's an interesting thought, conjectural, of course,
Right.
but yeah. So that's an interesting book too.